can tell her, you can tell her anything. She's a real good listener. You can tell her anything.
Yo, what's up? It's your girl, Father Longlegs. This is Daddy T. Wow, I forgot my own intro. I gave myself these nicknames, but one day there will be merch, I hope, if I ever, make more than $100 doing this podcast. But very excited to have my guest on today. I've been trying to get him on for a while, and this is one of those situations where, the pandemic actually maybe helped make it easier to schedule, because I know we tried to do this before, and he's just so popular and successful that he's booked all the time. So let me introduce him. He's written for All That. You've seen him on Netflix and Astronomy Club, and I believe he has a couple other projects coming up, because I always see a bunch of exciting I just booked this. So you can follow him on Twitter and Instagram to get all that. His Twitter is James Third Comedy, but give it up for James the Third.
Woo!
What's up?
Yeah, that was a great intro.
Oh, thank you. I get really into stand-up intro mode. Well, you did stand-up. I feel like your show was one of the first stand-up shows I did.
Oh my God, was it?
Was it? I think it was at the Pit Loft.
Yeah.
You set us a show there, right?
Wow, that's crazy. I didn't know that. Okay, great.
Well,
that makes me feel good.
I think it's not. I feel like this is a thing comedians do, and I for sure am guilty of this, which is to act like you've been doing comedy for longer when you haven't, and then when you've been doing it a long time, act like you haven't been doing it a long time.
Right. It's I just started.
Yeah.
And you've been doing it for 10 years. Oh my God.
I know. So I probably just dated myself, but I'm pretty sure when I did your show, it was early enough where I was like, I should tape this. Do you know what I mean? Year one, you're like, I got it. And then you're like, what the fuck?
That makes me feel good, just because I feel like my time doing stand-up was why was any of that a thing? I'm like, why did I try that at all? And to know that one of your first shows was at a show that I was doing makes me feel good. It's someone got to do one of their first shows then.
Well,
I can feel good about that.
It is that I think the tape exists somewhere in an archived YouTube. Before we get too far, because I feel like there's so much I want to catch up with you and talk to you about, but I like to start with a good confession just to start on a positive note. So, yes. James the Third, is there anything good you want to confess?
I think this is a positive confession. Is I was super into Cash Money Millionaires as a kid, but I thought it was making me super angry. And then my mom was telling me that she actually was trying to get me to stop listening to it. And the next thing that I got into was S Club 7, the polar opposite of that. And it just feels like, and I'm remembering now that the first album I ever bought with my own money was S Club 7. So I feel
like. Is it the Never Had a Dream Come True one?
No, it was the one before Never Had a Dream.
You were on S Club 7 before?
Yes,
wow. So you are a trendsetter.
And I just love that, that both of those things about me are true. That, I was super into, very hardcore Southern rap. And then, and also S Club 7.
I love that. And I feel I'm sure we'll touch on this more, but this is one of the things I was like, I hope we get to this in the interview, because you and I feel through our Twitter, because we knew each other from UCB and stuff, but I moved to LA, and so I think through Twitter I've come to understand, and maybe I don't know if you'll feel the same, but that we have very similar niche,
yes,
niche tastes in pop culture. And when I say niche, I mean I think you were the only person to like an Ionesco joke I made, and you specifically said you liked it because of that. So I was like, okay, I see my people And you saying that music thing rings really true to that, because I mean, not those exact references, but for me, I was very much a teeny bopper, but I was teeny bopper, then angst, and then hardcore rap, and I was I feel as an adult, to me, I'm bisexual vibes, but maybe it's just 90s vibes. Maybe we all grew up in this time when we were so things are categorized, and we were well, I want all of it, so just give it to me.
Yeah, because it was like you either there was like one thing that was you, or you were like, no, I do all of the things,
Yeah,
you know?
but
Like,
it was
don't
still
put-
stratified. It wasn't like now where Gen Z TikTokers are like, oh, I can just be everything, and it's like a hybrid.
Right.
We had to be like, this is the day I dress goth. This is the day I
Right.
dress prep.
I'm swimming in my giant pair of pants and white t-shirt and like and sneakers, and like I have a do-rag in my back pocket. Like, yeah, that there
I
would
straight up
definitely
would
be the
alternate.
days of
I'd be
that.
like goth today, prep tomorrow. But in my head, I was like, it's just fashion. But I think people are like, what are you doing?
What?
What were you like in a clique in school growing up?
Yeah, I mean, we were not the coolest, but yeah, there was, you know,
Good,
there were
because that
like,
would mean you were an asshole. No, I'm just kidding. But usually the popular kids, with a few exceptions, tend to
But
not be the nicest. But
yeah, there was a crew of us. There was like four of us, and we were kind of like, you would say, like a diverse group of people. Like, you know, there was like the Christian and like the gay guy and like the black guy. You know, like we were like.
and you were the Christian, right?
No,
No,
I was. There was a period of time where I was like, I am wildly Christian, but I wasn't. You wouldn't call me the Christian.
That checks out to me because it's interesting how comedy that is comedy's job to like kind of talk about the taboo. I said that so weird. Religion tends to, at least traditionally, in earlier generations, be this thing that's quote unquote taboo. So I think it makes sense that comedians often shit on religions, and Christianity is one of the big ones. So even through comedy, I've been like, there's this assumption that everyone hates on Christianity. But I think even in doing this podcast, tons of people in comedy have come from either very religious backgrounds or still are in it, or very, or almost extreme culty situations. And that checks out to me because it's not the religion itself or the institution. It's this need to belong and this search for it, which drives, I think, a lot of people to comedy and art. And so I think a lot more people than we realize have gone through a quote unquote Christian phase or a religious phase or a faith, you know, very, very deep in one specific view faith phase in comedy.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially, and it does, like what you said, like, because there is so much like anti like Christian or establishment like comedy that it feels like we're all like heathens, but
yeah, there's a very binary view, which like just in your intro we see that it's not like that. Yeah, Jonathan Braylock from Astronomy Club as well. When he talked about when he did this pod, talked about his religious upbringing, which I'm sure you guys have had many conversations about.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, but I just
yes, we have. Oh my god.
You're like that. You've heard his monologue. He gives at auditions all the time. No. Yeah, that's the thing that I found, because I didn't grow up religious, but so many of my friends, I feel like, share those like the questions, maybe not the answers, if that makes sense. Which is what I love about plays, because I feel like in a lot of plays they're asking the same questions that a lot of these like faiths ask, but they don't answer it. They let you watch it and answer it. And
right. It's often upsetting if a play does answer.
Oh yeah,
like,
then you're
this
like,
is
I
the
wanted
answer.
to like you. Like, yeah. That's how I feel watching David O. Russell movies. Like,
yeah.
The first two acts, I'm always like, yes, love it, give it to me. Like, cool, stylized, good structure, tight writing, and then the third act, I'm like, what? You can't just tie this shit up. Like, that's not life. Like,
yeah, there's no solution.
Yeah, I'm sorry if you guys like David O. Russell. I like Silver Linings Playbook, but I feel like the first two halves were so high for me, and then the last half took it away, that now it just is average. Like, I'm glad it exists, but I'm like, that's not how mental illness works. You don't just find a more mentally ill person and dance and it's good. Like, you gotta, it's hard. You gotta work through it. But well, speaking of mental illness, no, I am going somewhere with this, because I started this podcast when I didn't grow up with a lot of access to therapy or understanding it, and it wasn't really till I went to New York and college and comedy that I started going to therapy and understanding like how important mental health is. And so that's sort of where this podcast came from, was how just how the relief I would feel talking to a therapist or, you know, in general, someone, a third party about how I was feeling. So that's where this idea came from about confessing. So I like to ask, and everybody has a different background, but like whatever you're comfortable sharing, what's your experience with therapy? Like, do you love it, hate it? And, you know, we've had all sorts of answers, so don't feel like there's a right or wrong, but just to get your background.
So my mom is a psychiatric nurse. And she got into that later in life. She started as like an RN and then went back to school and like got into psychiatry, and now works at the Department of Veterans Affairs in Cleveland to deal with vets and going through, you know, what they could go through. But for me, my personal relationship to therapy has always been like I only got into therapy for the first time this year, like in the last 12 months.
Okay, so virtual was your introduction?
Yeah, well, no,
or pre-pandemic or post?
With the last actual 12 months. So before everything shut down, we were meeting in person. And I'm in couples therapy with my wife as well. So I'm doing individual therapy and doing couples and like sort of I've jumped into sort of a lot of inward exploration in a way that is uncomfortable and I hate. And also,
but that's, you know. I mean, well, first of all, no, I love that. No, I've had, for someone who last year at one point, not a joke, had 4 therapists. Well, one was a psychiatrist. So these were all different people that were doing different things. But I say normalize having a team. This was before, I mean, I had a manager, but I did not have an agent. And I was just like, my team's working hard for me. But that's a stupid industry joke. But truly, I know, I think the more, just like if you were like, okay, let's use the physical, because mental health is to me just as important as physical health. And in fact, it shouldn't even be separated. It's kind of connected.
Yeah, it's all.
It's in your body. So, but you know, when people are like, "Oh, I'm training for, you know, let's say training for a marathon," then you have your like different coaches and your different trainers. Can you tell I don't work out? Because I'm like, you've got your arm coach and you know, you've got your leg coach. You've got, you know.
I don't work out at all, so all of this seems accurate to me. Is that not what people do?
The idea is that it's not strange to have multiple trainers, right? And that's pretty normal if you're like, oh, I go to this guy and that guy, I've got my soul cycle. And I feel like therapy should be like that. And so I think we should normalize that, and I think that's great. Like, it makes sense you would go to couples therapy with your wife and then have a different therapist for one-on-one, because those are two separate things. It's like you wouldn't have your dentist operate on your eyes. So
you're right. Yeah. That would be so strange, but also, but it would be a fish. You know, there's a time where you're like, God, I gotta go to a separate doctor for just my feet. Like, it's like, what?
Yes, at a certain point, I do think we are all being a little bit scanned by the mental health industry. And I did tell this to my psychiatrist, who half agreed with me and then said, it's not really my expertise to tell you any advice. Because I have a theory that I won't get too into this, but really quickly, that allergies are, in the next 20 years, hopefully not longer than that, we'll figure out is way more connected to our bodies than like mental health, depression, anxiety, even like skin problems than we think. Because it's literally the immune system, and that's like the thing that functions. But yet most people don't go to allergists. It's not even a main care provider. And then when you do go, it's so separate. So I told my psychiatrist this because I was trying to put together all the things that was happening to me in quarantine, even though I was like, this is like whack-a-mole. Like, I like go to this and I'm like, they're all connected. Right. And I told her, and I was like, is there any way I can like kind of like get us all on a call or like just to be like, I think this is connected. And she was like, no, but you know, you can, there are like holistic alternative medicines if that's what you want. And I was like, wow, condescending, first of all. Second of all, she then asked me if I would be interested in medication and suggested an antihistamine. And I was like, do you hear yourself? Do you know what an antihistamine is? It's an allergy medicine. And she was like, yes, I understand, but this is also used to prescribe like insomnia and trouble sleeping. And I was like, bitch, I didn't say bitch. I was very respectful.
But that's what you were like. But on the inside, you were like, that's what you were like.
I was respectful, but I was like, I know you have a PhD, but you agree, right? Like, this system is making you not allowed to tell me things because it's not officially proven, but come on, these are connected.
Yeah.
So I hope in 20 years we figure it out, at least.
Yeah. I hope it's in exactly 20 years.
Maybe less than that. I give it 20 because 10 feels too, like, I mean, yeah, I guess I've almost been doing comedy for 10 years, and I'm like, not enough time to figure out depression. Like,
yeah.
I don't foresee that being figured out, but maybe. So your mom's a psychic. Okay, I feel like I got too excited about. There's like just so much I want to talk to you about, and I'm.
Yeah, well, I brought that up just because like to me it feels I've sort of had a weird relationship with therapy for myself, which is why it took me so long to get into it. I've always felt like I should go, you know, but I brought up what my mom does just because it has been such a big part of my life. Like, it's been in my life in this way. But I never explored it for myself until I think I went to like one therapist once in like 2008, 2009 or something, you know, and then never went back to him, and then never attempted it again until now.
Was it something that because in your family, if your mom worked in the field, I imagine it wasn't like an unknown, or like it wasn't something she discouraged you going to. So was it more just like, where did it come from, the resistance? I'm just curious. I
don't know. I do think that I had, like, as much as this is the one of the like main things that people talk about as the bad way to think about therapy but like I think I always thought that like, oh, I can get over it, or like I, you know, understand how I work enough, you know, like I know who I am kind of thing. Except like I don't know, like the idea of knowing who I am feels like such a strange thing to say too for me. But I think that I've just often had that POV. I also generally don't like doctors and finding out. I always feel like I'm gonna find out something's wrong with me. You know, like
sure.
If I go to the doctor, something's wrong with me. If I go to the therapist, they're gonna tell me something's wrong with me. Like. So I've always been like, I think I've been sort of afraid to take that leap.
Yeah. Well, I understand that. I mean, and that's not uncommon at all. And that is, especially talking about growing up in the 90s, how sitcoms made therapy seem. So even, I think it only in the last couple of years have I even normalized saying mental illness. And even that, I'm like, we should change that. That's still, it's just like everyone, if you're not mentally ill, you might be way more mentally ill than, you know what I mean?
If you're like, then you are.
Because it's like, when I hear someone say they're going to therapy or have at least one therapist, then I'm like, they're treating it. And when someone's like, I don't need it, I'm like, oh, you have a lot. And that's okay. Everyone's on their own time. But I do, I totally, that resonates with me, because growing up, it wasn't even a thing. It wasn't until I was in a crisis that I started going. And now I realize I can be preventative about these. I don't have to wait for the crisis. I can try to get the tools to avoid these, like, you know, breakdown moments. So that's what I've loved about it. But I know the system's not good yet. So I do want to acknowledge that there's a lot of hard ropes to get through in trying to get help mentally. And then also, even when you're on a path, like, I feel like I have resources and I'm still like, I've graduated. There's no next level that I can take, but there should be, because I'm not perfect yet. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, I love that. So it seems like you're getting comfortable talking about your life and yourself. So I'm curious, James, is there anything you would like to tell me?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how big of a confession this is, but this is something that I held on to for a long time and rarely talk about. But I graduated in 2008, but I'm the class of 2017.
Wait. You graduated
so I had
college.
I had a graduation at a college graduation ceremony in 2008. but I'm actually the
Whoa,
class
so
of
you're a
2017.
boy genius.
No.
Wait.
I was of age in 2008 to actually graduate school. I just was not actually done. I had the ceremony.
I see. Okay. I flipped
My
it, but
family
still.
flew out. Everybody watched. It was like I got handed a fake piece of paper with nothing on it.
Okay, I see. So you did the thing and then you finished the courses.
And I didn't finish school for another 10 years.
Wow. Okay. Where did you go to school?
I went to Marymount Manhattan College.
Nice. Okay, so you were right in New York. Well, obviously you were pursuing your dream and quite successfully. So I feel like looking back, I'm sure there were reasons for this, and it seems hopefully the right reasons. But curious.
There were no good reasons for it.
Okay. Well, so tell me what. Yeah. So tell me, was it like a ridiculous like one class left, and you're like, I'll get this done?
It was one class left. That's exactly what it was.
Goodness.
I had one class to do. I was just a bad student. Like I didn't finish it while I was in school. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't try to get help from the teacher until like the last few weeks of class, and he was like, "Bro, you haven't done anything."
Was
like,
it hard or boring, or what you just
it was
didn't
boring.
Care? Okay.
And then I ended up taking, because it was one of those like we had like general education courses. I think we called them core curriculum. So it's like, you had to take a class, like a lit class, and you have to take it was like that sort of thing, and or whatever the category was. But I ended up it was like I was in a class on Irish literature and drama, and I just didn't. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. And then I ended up taking, and it was not the exact same class, but I ended up taking a class on James Joyce to graduate. So I ended up still taking an Irish literature class.
Gotcha. On drama, isn't Beckett Irish?
Wait.
Isn't Samuel Beckett?
Yes. Beckett is Irish.
Although that class sounds like it might be too boring to actually get into the fun stuff.
But I like Beckett.
No, I like Beckett too. That's why I was curious. I was surprised when you said, but then I was like, if I saw Irish literature on a catalog, I don't know that I would have thought Beckett or thought to take it.
The works I think actually were interesting, and once I actually took this class on just James Joyce, I was like, I'm interested in all of it. Like everything that I read was like not boring, but I just think that I was like, at the time I was just like, man, I ain't trying to do this right now. I got other, and then, but it was crazy because the guy who taught that class was the guy who ended up reading our section of names. So I was like, he knows I didn't like this guy knows I didn't graduate, but he like called I was like, is he gonna call my name? Is he gonna skip over me?
He was like a personal vendetta.
Yeah.
Wow. So were you studying acting? That's an acting school, right?
Yeah, it was I went to school for acting. It was a college, and all the other majors were available to me, but
I imagine that as going to school for acting in New York and then being a successful actor, I imagine nobody is like, wow, you're a bad student. But I do like that, talking about that, because I grew up with a lot of rules and structures too, and thinking that I had to just do the thing told to me and do it well, and that would make me good. And I think a lot of people are told that because that's what we think we're supposed to do, until you grow up and you're like, oh, but successful people don't do that. You have to respect people, but you also at some point have to be like, okay, I realize why these rules are here and they're not for me. And so that's why I wanted like kind of break that down a bit, because you did use those words, bad student. And I think you were kind of joking, and I would have said the same thing.
I am a bad student.
Why do you say that? Because I, as a person looking at someone who studied acting, would say you are a model student.
Oh, wow. Okay,
because you are a successful actor, and that's what people go to school for acting.
Well, it's funny
you're
too,
on
though,
your way, you're
because
like on TV and doing stuff. I would say if I was in school getting straight A's, that means nothing. You know what I mean? So I'm curious why you say you're a bad student.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I think that at the time I was a good acting student. Like I cared about those classes and did the work there, and like am a type of person who's like, I get a script and I'm interested in, dissecting the character and that sort of thing. But like, I never cared about papers. I never, I never cared about, making sure I was in class, like in my other classes on time, or even just, like I didn't care about everything else. So like I was just not a good student in that way.
Were your teachers, this is more for exercise. This is not in a challenging way, but I really am.
Please.
I've been thinking so much about the way we use language. And so this is for me, like, oh, this is really interesting. I want to dissect it because did you feel like you learned in the classes you wanted to learn things? And did you feel like you went to school and learned what you wanted to?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do feel that way.
And then I think the definition of a student is to be the learner. It sounds a little bit, I'm not saying it's all on the school or the teacher because there's a lot of students to pay attention to, but sounds like you may have also had bad teachers. Because It's sounding like you were treating the classes not, like, depending on the class and the subject, you would either pay attention or not. And of course, there's, something to be said of like following rules and do it no matter what. But at the same time, like, you weren't across the board a bad student because you said the stuff you cared about, you wanted to learn. So
that's true. I mean, that's true. That does sort of make me think differently about like whether or not I'm a good or bad student, right? But like, in terms of like, dotting every I and crossing every T, I didn't do that. But yeah, I did. I was a good student when I cared about the work, I guess, right? Like,
yeah, I can relate to that a lot because I had ADHD. Well, I have ADHD, but I didn't get diagnosed till last year. It's interesting that you went to therapy last year for the first time because November last year was when I officially started treatment for ADHD, but known for a while because my twin sister had it, like, diagnosed a few years ago, and it's classic ADHD manner. Took me a very long time to go through the hoops to also get the diagnosis, even though I was like, genetically, but
yeah.
But it explained a lot because I used to think that I was bad too. And I would always just do well enough to still be good. Because I did care. Like, my family was really, really like, I felt so much shame if I didn't do well. But I didn't feel like it was easy or that I wanted to do well. It was always to get the grade. And then what I really cared about was the things I wanted to learn. So I would do extracurriculars and theater. And looking back, I'm like, that's what school is for, is to learn. So it's so strange that I felt like getting good grades was taking away from the stuff I wanted to learn. So that's why I bring that up, because I think this is changing a bit with the internet and people, young people being able to talk to each other. But I never saw it that way till I was an adult, that like clearly I learned a lot, but not because of the grades. Like, the grades were just to get the grades and move on, and then I could go learn the things I wanted to. So I just think that's an interesting way to put it. But so why did it take 10 years, though, if it was one class?
I mean, well, money. I think I ended
Wait, so do you have to pay to stay matriculated, or you can just come back and?
No, you could come back. I think there was like, I think what essentially happened was like, I probably signed up for a couple classes that I didn't have money for, so then I would have to drop.
Also, you did it. You tried multiple times. It wasn't like you didn't think about it.
It wasn't. Okay. It wasn't like. I only attended. I want to say, I think post 2008. I think I maybe attended 2 classes, one of them being the one in 2017 that I finished, and then another one being one that like I also was just like, I don't have time. I don't have time for you. I'm not doing this class, and then after that, like, money started to become a real problem. Like, having, I think, to take one class, like it was maybe $3K or maybe $5K or something. Like, just having that at one time was just proving itself to be impossible. And like, and like I had terrible credit, so like I couldn't get a loan for the amount, so it was just like, it just took a really long time for me to do it. And then also then there was a certain point where it was like, the money became an excuse and time was the other thing of like, oh, like I just don't have time. I just don't feel,
Yeah, totally. Well, so then my other follow-up question is, because all this time I know you were doing comedy and moving along, why did you feel like you needed to go get the degree?
Yeah, I mean, I like it was almost never a problem to not have it. Like oftentimes jobs wouldn't check, so like I would say I graduated in 2008 in job interviews and stuff, and like it never was a problem. I ended up actually taught at a college without having a college degree for a semester. But that was an instance of being like, I have to tell you this. Like most of the time I would just like, only if they ask, I'll say something,
Yeah, but it's like you did like 98% of the degree, but just because you didn't get the degree, it's like, like any adult who understands what that means and wants you there is going to be like, yeah, it's fine because we already want you here.
Yeah, but I think I ultimately got it because, like, primary, my mom, who was like the co-signer on most of my college loans, just being like, I just really wish I could see your degree. I want your degree. And there was a period of time where, like, there was a long time where I was like keeping that reality from her that like I didn't graduate.
Yeah, because you said they came out and they didn't know when they came to watch you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. No one knew at the time of graduation that I knew. No one else knew. And then I think I held on to it for a couple years before I told my
So
my
they were
mom,
just
but
like, wait, with the empty frame, like, we're going to frame it when it gets in. How come they haven't sent it yet?
I haven't got it yet. Because some stuff is happening and there was like stuff that I could like lie and say, like I transferred schools, and so there were credits that needed to be counted that they like weren't counting, and I was going to need to contest those, because like otherwise it would mean like taking acting 1 again after having finished it was like,
they're still counting the votes, they're not all in yet. We'll count the legal credits when they get in.
I did say that for a while, and then I just finally like fessed up.
Yeah.
And then I think eventually it got to a point where like I was working enough that I felt like I could pay in installments. I still needed to pay on, they were like I like owed the school money, and like I couldn't register until I paid the school back. There was a lot of like money stuff happening. But then once I was able to like clear that up, and then it was like, oh yeah, now I feel like I have like a few dollars to actually pay for school, and just wanted to like, I wanted to show my mom the degree, and I wanted to be like, yeah, I finished that one class. I actually, all of this money wasn't for nothing.
Well, that is nice, because there is something nice about checking something off, even if like, okay, I don't have to.
Yeah. At this point, it didn't matter. Yeah. It didn't. 2017, it didn't matter to have a BFA in acting anymore. But
I don't think it ever really mattered. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but it mattered at the time. In 2008, to have a BFA in acting, at that point, it would have meant something, and I would have felt like I accomplished this thing.
Yes, for you. But I think I'm saying more like, I have a BFA in screenwriting, and it has never mattered to any place that I'm trying to work. But that's neither here nor there. How did you feel when you finished this class?
Really good. I felt so good. I felt like, I was like, wow, I couldn't believe that I was reading James Joyce and enjoying myself because of the other class, like being so disinterested at that time. And then like just to be done, felt like a great to finally do it and finally have that, like to not have that. I like stopped having those. I mean, I still have them sometimes, but like for a really long time I was having those like, you didn't finish middle school dreams, like something is left, something's left on your middle school report that you didn't do and you didn't fit, like I was like, I would have these really weird,
your
dreams
subconscious
like
was telling you, it's like, hey.
Yeah.
You never cut the
like,
umbilical cord.
yeah.
Oh shit.
Like me as an adult going back to middle school and sitting in classes with
my
like a bunch of children, like
That's an Adam Sandler movie.
Yeah, exactly.
You should pitch the reboot now. Billy Madison. That's really cool. I think in a weird way, I feel like quarantine has, because I've been spending so much time alone, I've in a weird way been like, I call it reprogramming. That sounds like a cult thing, but I swear I'm not about to have you join a cult. But I've been reprogramming myself in that, like, I also have like these like negative patterns from childhood and a lot of things where I feel like things, I have no choice or it has to be this way. And then I've slowly, because I have more time, started to, tackle one at a time. But the feeling you describe of like that good feeling, that's like a positive pattern that over time, when you have more of those of like, doing something that was hard and then feeling good about it, it starts to be exciting to do it the next time. Like even when it's hard, you're like, oh, I remember that feeling at the end of it. So those moments actually help, I feel like in a way reprogram you to want to like do all the stuff you want to do. And then all the things you don't want to do, it's easier for you to draw the line and be like, no, I don't want to do this, not because it's hard.
I don't want to do that.
Yes. Yeah. So it actually helps like eliminate these like the sort of outside pressure where you're like, I don't know if I'm supposed to do this or what I'm supposed to do. It starts to give your, like that feeling you said of finding yourself or knowing who you are. You start to find that in those moments, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, it's funny that you say James Joyce, because I don't know if you know this, but James Joyce has like a book of like, it's not his book, but someone published a bunch of his letters that he wrote. Have you heard of this? Okay. Okay, if there's time at the end, I'll go grab it upstairs, but it's like really dirty. Like it's like love letters, but like sexy letters that he's written to like his
I think we talked about
okay,
this.
maybe we did.
I want to say we did, but I mean, I don't think it's something that I have read, but I feel like that feels right to me.
It's wild.
Like, yes.
I was curious because I think I saw an article about it. Like I didn't, like it was, I think the Atlantic or some bigger publication published some excerpts, and then I got curious and found a secondhand copy and bought it. So I have a copy. So if we have time at the end, I'll read to the readers or to the listeners too, because there's some weird stuff in there. But I haven't actually. That's my confession. I've never actually read Ulysses. So.
Oh, okay.
Never fully read. The only James Joyce I've read is Naughty Letters.
And honestly, you know more about him from reading that than
probably. Yeah, I think I do. Yeah. I know his questions. Oh, so I did want to talk a little bit about like the plays, because I just love.
Absolutely.
That you respond to the chairs. So you studied theater, so I'm guessing that you have a background in theater, but you also, I feel like, have a specific interest, if I'm not wrong, with absurd plays and sort of the
I mean, when I was heavy into theater, yes, and when I was in New York and doing theater, I would have considered my home this experimental theater in New York called Target Margin Theater. I did like 4 or 5 plays there.
Oh, cool.
and workshops and stuff.
That's awesome.
For like a period of like 4 or 5 years.
Wow. Wait, these are original plays, or what were you in?
So what the mission of the theater is they would ask like, what is a play? Like, what is a play? Like, what defines a play?
Okay.
So we would often do classical works, but in an insane, like the last full play I did there, or no, this maybe been the second to last, but we were all in like blue leotards with sparkly, multicolored.
You're in the Blue Man Group? No, I'm just kidding.
It was the Blue Man. It was the Blue Man Group, and so, but like we looked insane, and we had glitter all over our faces, and like would do a lot of like weird physicalities, and the scenes would be weirdly deconstructed, and so anyway, I say all that to say, like, I loved that. And then
Wait, what
in
was
school,
the classical part of that? Or what was it
oh,
interpreting?
so like we would do like the plays were like the plays were just like all from like the 1800s. And so the first play I did was actually a Shakespeare. It was The Tempest.
Oh, I love
And then the later play, I think they also ended up doing like Uncle Vanya and like
It's interesting
you know.
because because I went to school downtown New York, and that's, I think, you saying like it's crazy, whatever. I understand what you're saying, but that is like not uncommon for even mainstream New York. Like the one of the first plays I saw in New York was the Wooster Group doing Hamlet 2.0. Or do you know the
yeah.
I don't know.
I saw that.
Yeah,
and
it was like
but
that kind of. I mean, I know that's more like yeah. Even within theater, it's like Hollywood, where there's like the Oscar-worthy, weird, cool stuff, but it's not. Like, you know what I mean? It's
exactly.
like the social justice piece of the ear, but it's like, but there's, if you actually look, there's a lot of much better, more importantly, authentic stories. Not that the big ones aren't important, but the play world is kind of like that. Where it's like, oh wow, the deconstruction of this, and then you're like, yeah, but go to a basement where people are screaming and there's two people in the audience. It's the same vibe, but less money involved.
Right. I mean, but that's the whole thing of there was Broadway and then there was off-Broadway, and off-Broadway was where the real crazy work was going. And then now off-Broadway is elevated. So there's off-Broadway, and Wooster Group, I think, is like they're off or off, right? Like, aren't they like?
They were at the public theater, so I don't know how.
Right. So then so then it was like they would something that would be considered off, you know, is elevated to being they're now at the public, you know.
Yes. It's very much like NPR vibes of or you know, PBS, where it's like like soft dulcet tones of we appreciate this art.
Yes.
It's
they're doing 3 productions of Hamlet at the same time. Isn't that amazing?
Okay, you made me think of a memory I haven't thought of forever, but I went to see my friend's B-boy group. God, what was it called? I think they were called, God, I should know. Because they kind of broke up, but I knew one of them because one of my weirdly residents was dating one of them. But they're like, you know, they were doing like ciphers and stuff, and I knew them out in LA just like from just practicing, but they got a show at the Joyce, and I went to watch them, and it was the weirdest experience because I never seen breakdancing in a theater like that, and it was really cool. But there were moments when I'm just used to like screaming and throwing my shoe and yelling, and people were sitting. And they were like hyping and doing all this stuff, and it was so strange. Because I'd be
I just saw
woo, like, because I was
yay.
What can we do? Yeah, because you want to be like, yeah, like it's just like that's the vibe, and then everyone's like.
I just saw a Vampire Cowboys show. It was the last thing I saw before COVID happened. I just saw a Vampire Cowboys show at the Geffen, I want to say is where it was, and it was just like this big proscenium theater, and you know, and Vampire Cowboys is really, they're just doing they're off Broadway, but they're doing the like just the strangest work. Like, and it was like it was like hip hop infused, and like there were puppets, and like it was just so wild. But then the crowd, it was like a Sunday matinee of like just old people like watching and like kind of very calmly, oh night, that's not, you know, like just it's always so odd when you mix those things, but it's good for the exposure of that sort of what would be underground art,
I think that's the truth. It is good to be mainstream, but to be there in the transition can be very strange. And it was a weird moment. Because it's like that merging of the worlds. Like, even back to your good confession, it's like you are in both worlds, and then you're watching them meet each other. It's not that you are in one and then you're meeting. Like I took my residents to see that, and I was an RA, so I was very much in that world that I was in. I was in NYU RA taking my residents. Like, yes, there's a certain structure, and you know, it's nice little frilly walls and protective nest of being in college and getting free tickets to go see, you know, dance. And then be like, oh, they're merging. Like, this is strange. Like, yeah. But okay, I love that. I wanted to. Okay, I'm trying to pick what to talk about because there's so many things I'm curious about, like with your plays. But what's your favorite playwright? I am just curious.
Well, my favorite playwright is August Wilson.
Oh my God, piano lesson was one of the first. Went to theater camp when I was like 11, and we did the piano lesson, and we randomly made up a song to it, and I still, when I hear August Wilson, I sing the song in my head, which
piano lesson is there's a ghost in that one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, just making sure, because they, at this point now, it's been a while since I've we went back and reread, but it's scary. Like the end of piano lesson is terrifying. It's like,
I guess it is. I always thought it because it is, but it's like it builds to this moment that is very emotional. But interesting. How old were you when you first read it? Because I missed the fear because I was.
I recently saw a production of it recently. I want to say 3 years ago.
Oh, okay. Oh, cool. I bet you saw it in New York.
And the ending of it was like, oh wow, they like figured out a way to like, when the ghost shows up, of like really making it in the environment and
cool.
And the way they lit it and everything. Anyway,
where did you see
Fences,
it?
Fences is my favorite play.
But did you see? Because I know you lived in New York, so I'm guessing you got to see like a really good production of. Was it on Broadway?
It was off Broadway.
That's so cool.
It was off Broadway. Yeah.
Man, I realized a lot of plays I read before I saw, which I do like doing that, but when you see it first, you get the full scope, which is cool, and then going back to read it, I don't know if it takes away, but I love that when I went to New York for school, I was able to like see stuff that really
my
cool.
biggest regret is like seeing Felicia Rashad and Delroy Lindo. I think ended up leaving, but in Gem of the Ocean, which was one of his last plays, and it's really good. I've never seen a production of it. I've only read it. And there are ghosts in that, and
So take it you like ghosts. So
I love ghosts. Ghosts are that's actually why I like August Wilson, because of ghosts.
It's funny that was the first thing you said, because I'm like, that is true, but it's not even how I classify a lot of the ghost Shakespeares. But there are 3 Shakespeares with ghosts, and people always like, these are the ghost Shakespeares.
Yeah, these are the ones with the ghosts. Yeah. Well, yeah, just because there's spirituality to all of them, all of August Wilson's plays, but for there to be a literal ghost, that moves
the piano,
that plays the ghost plays the piano, and moves, at least in this production of it, like opens and closes cabinets and stuff, and like for there to be a, and there's people that live for over hundreds of years in his plays, and like people that do voodoo and stuff, so like there is mysticism, but it becomes shocking when things are real, like King Hedley II is one of his, and I've both seen a production and also read it. I read it before I saw it, and I
haven't read that one, but
it's very good.
Okay.
But while I was reading it, I was like, this is boring. I'm not interested in it. But throughout the play, the guy who's sort of narrating it is like, he wants to raise a cat from the dead, and he needs the blood of he says something like, it's called King Hedley II. He says something like he needs royal blood in order to raise the cat from the dead. And so the whole play, he's like talking about this, and then Hedley gets shot. He falls on the grave. He bleeds onto it, and then we hear a cat meow, and that's the end.
Oh my God, I love that.
and I got to that, and I was just like, this is the greatest thing I've ever read, and I was.
It built to it.
So sometimes that's what tips me over is
Yeah.
like when the mysticism of the plays becomes something that's like it's now in the physical world.
Yes.
Like it does work, it is real,
You know what's so interesting, because I like when you're saying that, I realize like, yeah, I think okay, I'm trying to like put this thought together, because right now it's like I know a thing and I can't put it in a sentence, but the idea, because August Wilton is a realist playwright in the sense that like the plays are existing in the real world, they're not absurd, but then there is magical realism, and then on the other hand you have extreme like absurdists like Ionesco, where words don't make sense, but it is like, people love to say it's like absurdist or postmodern or whatever, but it is real because it's people. It's like, and you do not, you're sitting there watching something happen, it's not actual chaos, and it's scripted and blocked. But what I love about that is, I think as a writer and comedian and, liking rap and S Club 7, you can probably see how they're not that different. But from the outside, there is this like categorization of writing. And so I love that your favorite playwright is August Wilson, but also that you love absurd plays, because they're really not that different. It just uses one to highlight the other. Like the realism of August Wilson highlights that spirituality and mysticism you're talking about. Whereas the absurdness in Ionesco highlights the human emotion and the real feeling that you get at the end of the play. So
and sometimes, to people that poo-poo absurdist plays, it's like, so I have found that sometimes I am more moved by watching an absurdist play than I am by watching like a kitchen sink drama or something, like just watching people, in their home talking and dealing with the everyday life. I find sometimes I'm like, ugh, I'm not as interested in that, than when I am with like someone standing with their head on a ball and they're barking, and like what that really means is, how men are dogs and, or whatever.
Well, it's intention, because I think you can feel the artist's intention when there is, and you feel that raw emotion. And of course you can interpret it how you want, and that's the part where you bring you into it. I think people who don't like, well, this is a theory, I have no facts to back it up, so please at me if you're a scientist or know anything about this, but I think people who don't like absurdist plays or have a visceral feeling, not just like I'm bored by it, but like, oh, I don't like it, don't spend enough time outside of their ego or reflecting on their subconscious, because like, in a way, these absurdist plays are taking away the ego part, the surface of like understanding, but they get to a deeper part of you, and if you are in touch with that part of yourself, it's much more enjoyable to watch a play like that, because that part's activated.
What are dreams if not absurdist plays that we have in our head every single night?
Oh my god, true.
Like last night I had the weirdest dream, and it's the oddest dream I've ever had, in terms of like, when people describe dreams, they're like, it was my childhood dentist who was, like, or whatever. Okay, so yesterday I saw people that I haven't seen since my days of house managing in New York. And I've house managed at a bunch of different, and worked front of house at a bunch of different theaters. And then also I've been thinking a lot about how Netflix canceled Astronomy Club recently. So last night I had a dream where the Signature Theater Company in New York, it's a big complex now with three different theater spaces. And so I had this dream where I was back there house managing, but the complex was hosting Netflix premieres.
The complex, leveling up there.
Right, and my boss was my boss from another theater in New York, a boss who fired me for being like late to work. So it was like this weird thing of like, it was this weird thing where I was dealing with that old boss in an old place that I used to, in a different place that I used to work, that made me also confront the guy who ran Netflix. Wow. Like, he was like, there were just like so many things swirling, and it's just like, those are the ingredients of an absurdist play. Like, all of these things that are incongruous.
You're right. And dreams do is your brain's worry? I won't get too into this now because we're towards the end, but if you're curious, you should look up EMDR. But I've talked about on this podcast before, but it's trauma therapy that kind of uses what dreams do to help you process trauma. But dreams do that in a way to help you process the memories and emotions of the day. And that is kind of what art is meant for. So you're very, very, like, that's much more scientific, I think, than you realize.
Yeah.
But wait, okay, I have a couple more play questions. And then because I'm
Sure.
like, I didn't know you worked at the
Absolutely.
Signature Theater. I'm pretty sure that's where I saw Albie do
Yeah.
Peter and Jerry, or they did Zoo Story.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, the zoo.
and I got to, were you there?
What did they call
the
them?
Zoo Story?
Peter and Jerry is what they called the, yeah.
It was two
Yeah.
one acts, and my teacher at the time was friends with him because she's old and teaches at NYU, so of course. And
Yeah.
I love Albie, and so she let us, I mean, rest in peace, but we did a talk back with him with just our class after. And I'll
wow.
always remember he said this because I wrote it down, and for a while I was like, where did he say this? Because I wrote it in my notebook and it says Edward Albee. And I couldn't find it online, and I realized like he told it to us in person.
Yeah,
But
like you were the only people who heard that.
I'm sure he said it to other people, but I don't think it was published. But the quote I always remember from him is he said, "I've been writing the same play my entire life."
Yeah.
And I love that because that is often how I feel when I go back, even reading like diary entries or short stories from elementary. I'm like, I was just trying to untangle this big old knot this whole time. Like, But wait, were you working there during that? So you got to see that?
I don't think I worked there during Peter and Jerry, but I was at Signature a couple different times. I was an intern during their August Wilson season. That was when I got to see King Hedley, and then when they opened, was Peter and Jerry at the Pershing Square Center, or was it at their smaller?
I can't remember. I was like 17 years old. It's
yeah. It must have been at it's where UCB moved to. That's yeah.
I've never been to that theater. I moved away and never.
Okay,
yeah.
So that I think that's where it was at that point.
That's
but
wild.
yeah, so no, I didn't see Peter and Jerry when it was there. But what did I see? What Albee played while I was there? Because Albee did there was an Albee play while I worked there. I can't remember what it was though now. So that's useless. But that's
I do like his one. I honestly like a lot of his one acts more. But I think most people think of Virginia Woolf. But
yeah,
it is.
Yeah, we did a production of. I was not in it, but in college we did a production of Finding the Sun.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Very good.
I love reading. I used to go to Shakespeare & Co., also RIP, after school and just buy random plays. So whenever I don't have the time now, but
stay naming theaters stuff that's dead.
It was a bookshop. I once saw Rory from Gilmore Girls in there. I forget her name, but she was just looking at plays. And it was like, I was like, 17, first year in New York, the kind of now very like, I would groan if I saw me. But truly it was like, I'm in school at NYU. I'm going to go buy a play. Oh, look, there's a famous person. Like, it was like,
yeah.
I was like, oh, but that was
this is how it'll be forever.
Yeah, that was my introduction to New York. So I was like, I'm living it. And now I'm like, I'm paying the loan still. But, yeah, why did I say? Oh, because the play that you said, I'm going to write it down because I don't read enough now, but if someone specifically gives me a rec, what was the one that you said?
Yeah, Finding the Sun. It was really, I liked our production of it, and I thought the play itself is good.
Dope. Okay, so we're nearing the end, and I know that you and I love to tweet. Well, maybe I love to tweet niche references more, and you like to fave them, and you know better than to alienate your audience. But I really love exchanging stupid niche references where it's like the Venn diagram of pop culture, almost like in a basic way, and then with like literature. Like one of the things I love to say is like always a Hermia never, or sorry, always a Helena. Wait, always. Wow, I'm getting it wrong. Always a Helena, never a Hermia. But which I do think they need to make bridesmaids swimsuits.
Yeah.
Someone out there, fix up your bachelorette party. Or what's the one from King Lear where it's like, talk not of needs, the basest beggars are their needs superfluous. And I love to say that when I don't get a text back, like text me back. But this is just a little fun way to sort of let you improvise and get in your head and have some fun with niche references. So if you have just use whatever you want, any references to sort of like do the lit version of I'll give you a lyric and then you just do the literature version. Okay, so let's start with I got 99 problems but a bitch ain't one. Classic.
Okay. I got 99 problems with a bitch ain't one. That immediately makes me think of Macbeth. but just Macbeth
one.
saying that.
Oh,
yeah, a bitch is one.
I love that.
I got 99 problems, but burning wood ain't one. Or
I love that. Oh my God, I bet it already exists, like a WAP to like out damn spot or something. There's gotta be.
Yes, wait, someone did do that, and I replied to their tweet with more dumb Shakespeare references.
Yes.
And I have to find it, but it'll take me too long to find it. But
Shakespeare, to me, it's so fun because when you apply it to modern day things, it's the funnest, but then you really alienate because it's like such a small, there's a lot of people love Shakespeare and a lot of people love BuzzFeed, and not that many people dig as deep into both of those things, I feel like.
Yeah.
In a way that I hope. I used to have a Hedda Gabler joke, one of my first stand-up jokes. I might have done it on your show, and it never worked, always bombed, but usually one person would laugh, and that's, at the time, what I was going for was like, when I first started comedy.
Who gets this joke?
Yeah, it was a little bit more like, you're smart if you get it. And then I was like, oh, the goal is to entertain the paying audience, not to entertain yourself. So now I don't do that joke.
It's not fair.
But okay, cool. So this is a crazy book, which is called Selected Joyce Letters, edited by Richard Ellman. I don't even know, like just the first page I've turned to already has a lot of bad words that I don't know if I'll read them all. Not bad words. I mean, okay, no.
But he's talking about.
I'm not sex shaming, so it's not saying that they're bad words. It just maybe would be uncomfortable for me to read this to you. So I'm trying to find a less, I remember there was one part, okay, here he calls his penis his hog. So that's just to give you a little idea of the kind of words he's using. There was one, I don't know if I can find it here, but there was one where he's just talking about anal, but he talks about her bum and how she should fart all the time. And yes. So that's the kind of, that's why I was like, I want to, like, it's just, you won't believe me. Right? Okay, let me see if I can find one that's less. It's truly.
That's crazy to me. I mean, it just feels so odd to think. But then I'm also remembering, though, that I felt like he got criticism for being...
Oh, was he like a predator? Oh, no.
No, but like got criticism for being like, for being crass or being... I might be fully misremembering my class from 3 years ago, but I feel like he got that criticism for being like low and like bass.
Oh, yeah. Well,
not saying that all of his works are that way, but that was how some people looked at it.
Yeah, because I didn't read his main writing, but this does make me want to read it. There's some sweet things where he just says, I love you. And, okay, well... I
love you and your bum.
It truly is. Okay, let me see. I'll just bleep out things that I don't want to read. Hopefully this is not uncomfortable. Okay. Okay, yeah, I'll read this because this is... Okay, so Nora Barnacle is the girl, by the way. Nora Barnacle Joyce. I don't know if they got married. It sounds like they were long distance for a while, but maybe she took his last name. You are mine, darling, mine, I love you. That's nice. All I have written above is only a moment of two of brutal madness. Okay, so above is very, very explicit description of what he wants to do to her. And then he says, the last drop of seed has hardly been squirted up your cunt before
Wow.
it is over. And my true love for you, the love of my verses, the love of my eyes for your strange leering eyes comes blowing over my soul like a wind of spices. My prick is still hot and stiff and quivering from the last brutal drive it has given you when a faint hymn is heard rising in tender, pitiful worship of you from the dim cloisters of my heart.
Hold up. How dare they publish this? Whose idea?
One day I can only hope my sex and Snapchats will be published in a bound
Also,
book. Like, can you imagine?
He goes from being like, it barely has squirted up your cunt to like, but the gleam in your eyes are like, it's like he does both in a sentence.
Oh, it's like, it's so explicit that it's hard to even call it romantic, but it's also not, you can't say he doesn't love her. Like, it's like so encompassing love.
Nope.
It's like I love you so much, my prick is quivering, and also you're a beautiful human being and I worship you. It's like, okay. So yeah, so I just was like, I need to share this. I feel like you'll appreciate. But yeah, if anyone's curious, it's edited by Richard Ellman, and I got a secondhand copy. I don't know if they're still in print, but I'm sure you can find it.
I want to get that actually. I would love to get like a hard cover.
A hard, James. Okay.
A hard cover. Okay.
Well, this was so fun. Thanks for coming on the show. Can you let us know your plug your socials or anything you want people to know?
You know, it's just James Third Comedy. Anywhere you look, that's where I'm at.
With a 3 for the. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
3 for third. Thank you. 3RD for third. It can be confusing. Sometimes people just straight up don't tag me, or they'll write James THE 3RD for my name, and it's like that's not what. Well, because
it's in credits, it's the 3 with like the the standard 1 2.
Yeah, Roman numeral.
I'm like, how do I say Roman numeral? But yeah, so follow James Third Comedy on Instagram and Twitter. Watch Astronomy Club, even though Netflix fucked it up and didn't.
Netflix didn't promote us in the way I wanted them to, but please watch it because it's there for you to watch until they delete it, I guess.
It's such a good show, and we didn't even get into it. But I also love how your character, or the character that you are in it is.
Those weren't even lines.
Because you guys are a group that already improvs together and works together, so it's super fun to watch you guys go like sort of heighten. And your character is how I've always been in the sketch groups, which is like kind of the neurotic one that's like, hey everyone, let's do this, and owns it. And so it's like almost this idea of like, it starts as if you were ever bullied, it's coping, but then you realize if you can make the bully laugh and you're in on it, everyone's having fun. But there's something always so sad when I watch that, because it's like sad laughing, but I love it. And then it's the kind of thing that would make a bully laugh and just laugh, because like, ha 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 ha, and then make the bully like, la, I'm sad, but I like this because you get me. So I love it. So thanks for coming on the show. You can follow this podcast at Tell Me Anything Pod. Follow me at Larissa T on Twitter and Instagram. Goodbye.